And now we'd like to introduce Iqram Magdon-Ismail, the founder of Venmo. Venmo is a mobile payments platform that lets you send money with a really simple click on your smartphone, and it allows you to interact with your social network while you do so.
So Iqram is no longer a full-time involved with Venmo, but he's currently working on a number of very interesting projects. And this is an audio platform for creatives that he's currently focused on. He's also working on a new album. His recent investments include Kotu House, an amazing Sri Lankan restaurant on the Lower East Side. Know from firsthand experience, everybody should get out there and visit. And also working with a Kenyan company called Duma, which works on HR job matching and works on that platform. So without further ado, we'd love to introduce Iqram.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. I hope everyone's well. So, before I get started, when I do presentations like this, I like to introduce myself and first of all thank everybody for being here, giving me this opportunity to talk in front of you, and I hope by the end of my talk and everybody else's, you learn something. So, I'm Iqram. I spent the formative years of my life in Africa, particularly Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Uganda. And when I was 14, I moved to the US. I went to college in Philadelphia at the University of Pennsylvania, where I studied computer science and theater. And I've always, throughout my life, had an interest in entrepreneurship. Today, I'm going to talk about Venmo, which, among all the things that I've worked on in the past, is one that is the most popular from what I've put out. It's a company that I started with a good friend of mine. We met at the University of Pennsylvania as freshman year roommates. And when I think about how Venmo came to be, I often keep this story with me. It's a story about Pablo Picasso that I've heard. So legend has it that he was in a park and this lady approached him and said to him, "Hey, would you mind doing a quick sketch?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And he took out his paintbrush and sketched her in about 5 seconds, and he handed it over to her, and she was flabbergasted. She was like, "This is amazing. How did you capture my essence so perfectly in such a short amount of time?" And she said, how much can I give you for this painting?" And he said, about $5,000. And she goes, "What? $5,000 for 5 seconds of your time?" And he goes, "Madame, it only took me this painting took me an entire lifetime." So that resonates with me because over time, as I've kind of progressed through a lot of the companies that I've worked on, there are all these little bits and pieces that I gathered along the way, and eventually it combined into what made Venmo a success. So it reminds me that the daily, consistent progress is very important. So what I'm going to cover, I will first cover the ideation phase of Venmo. This is before Venmo had a product. It was just me and a friend brainstorming about what we wanted to work on and some of the ways we would bring a product to life. And then I'm going to talk about product fit, how we discovered product fit, and some of the funding that we went through. And after that, I'll talk about the 2 acquisitions we went through. I happen to have been in a very unique situation, being involved with 2 acquisitions. Venmo was acquired by one company, and then a year after another, and I'll talk about that. So first up, ideation. It all started at a concert that Cortina and I were attending. We were seeing a friend of mine's band, my friend Jason O'Mara. He had a funk band, just music, all instruments, and we were in the mezzanine level of the concert, looking down. And at the end, towards the end of the show, Jason O'Mara got on the microphone and he said, "Hey, we're gonna be passing around a tip bucket. Please throw some cash in there to support the band. Buy us a beer. We appreciate it. We gotta pay for the cab ride home, things like that." And Cortina and I were in the at the top on the balcony, and we were kind of lazy. We didn't want to go down, but we also wanted to support the band. But in the end, we didn't because we were too lazy. So we started talking. So we started talking about ways. Naturally for us being involved with technology, we talked about ways to alleviate this process. And one of the ideas we had was, what if you could just send money to the band with your phone? We both had BlackBerries at the time. And, in parallel to this, we were also trying to find ways to combine our tech skills with the burgeoning popularity of mobile devices. So we noticed a trend. 10 years ago, or 7 years ago, lots of people started, relying on their mobile phones. And BlackBerries were very popular at the time. This is even before the iPhone. And Cortina and I would get together without any sort of idea, but we kind of put some items down that we wanted to leverage. And one was mobile was key, and we wanted to participate in that community. And the other is we'd worked at startups together in the tech space for a while. We wanted to leverage those skills and combine the two and see what we'd come up with. When we started talking about tipping bands with our phones, we were like, okay, this kind of fits what we've been talking about in the first place, so let's explore it further. And that led to a little sketch, and it's kind of what we discussed at the concert. There's a phone, someone texts into Venmo, there's a short code, and you've probably seen experiences like this, and it was like, in some senses, the band could have a username, and bands could interact with their fans this way. They could sell their songs, musicians could support the bands, and that's where we landed. And here's a slide from our first pitch deck, actually. In 2009, February 2009, we put a 10-page slide deck. At the end of this talk, by the way, I have a glossary listing all these materials, which you can find on the web. But imagine you're at a concert. The band says, "Text this phone number to get this song." And if you're a consumer or a user, you've never heard this song before, and you're like, "Man, I really want to get that song." Bam! Now you could do it with Venmo. That was one idea. However, Cortina and I, in our history, we oftentimes brainstorm about things that apply to certain markets, but we're always trying to look towards how can we bring this to everybody. And it's generally when we find a way to apply a product that we're working on to everybody, that's what really gets us excited. So we ended up making this slide. This is the last slide in that pitch deck, which kind of rounded out the whole story. Eventually, Venmo enables anyone to accept payments for anything, anytime. It takes advantage of mobile phones. It's got anyone, which is everybody in the world, and it's for anything. And that was something that we could get behind because it's something that's large enough to occupy our lifetime. So at the time, Cortina lived in New York, I lived in Philadelphia, and he had to go back. It was Sunday night. We wrapped up this slide deck. He went back, and generally we do this. We put a little pitch together, we sketch it up, and then we sit on it for about 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, or until we meet again. And that was the end of that brainstorm. And then one weekend, about a month later, I left. I was going up to visit him in New York City from Philadelphia, and I left my wallet behind, but I had my BlackBerry with me. And that's when we had the eureka moment. We had a bunch of characters flying around like this in the air. It was after Cortina and I had spent the weekend together. We were going out, we were drinking, we were dancing, doing all kinds of things. He ended up paying for the entire weekend. It turned out to be about $250, and 6 years ago that was a lot of money for us. And we were both living paycheck to paycheck, part-time jobs, doing all kinds of things. And he needed that $250 really quickly. And on Sunday night, before I was catching my bus to go back to Philly, we were sitting at the bar and the receipt came. He ended up putting his Amex credit card down. Thank you, Amex, for that credit. And it struck us. Why can't I send you, we both thought, why can't we send each other this money through our BlackBerries? And that was kind of what really got us excited. It got us excited to the point where instead of sketching further or putting slide decks together, we decided we're going to actually build this. Cortina and I both had technical backgrounds. We'd worked on startup apps in the past. This is something that we knew we could build, and this is what kind of pushed us over the edge. We were like, okay, this is something we can use. So Cortina and I then, aside from our part-time jobs, spent every other waking hour working on a prototype that would allow us to send money to each other. And this is what it looked like. So the first version of Venmo was launched in about August 2009, and it worked entirely over SMS. And I have a BlackBerry there because that's what we both had. We both had BlackBerries. And here are some things that you'll notice. First of all, it's the operation of sending money to someone is very much like a Unix command, or it's a command line interface. Pay, phone number, amount, and you leave some note. What's kind of interesting about it is we kept it in line with what people are currently, and back then were used to, in terms of how you text message each other. And in some senses, sending money to someone was just like sending them a text. The only difference is you included a phone number or a username, and you included an amount. The note is something you normally do anyway when you send someone a text. And that's where the beginning of the social nature of Venmo started to emerge. Another key takeaway here is you'll notice that phone number. That's my phone number if you want to text me. Or send me money. That still exists, the ability to pay phone numbers. But we designed it so that you could pay phone numbers right out of the gate. The reason we did this is so that, in essence, everybody that had a phone, a text messaging device, was on Venmo. I could walk up to anybody at conferences. I remember going to South by Southwest, running to people and saying, hey, what's your phone number? I'm going to send you $1. And I could do that because we designed it so that as soon as you get money attached to your phone number, you then create an account, and then the money will be waiting for you, and we tied the phone number to the amount of money waiting for you. And that's how Venmo started to spread slowly but surely virally over time. We weren't really thinking of it like as this key indicator of what would make Venmo be spread virally, but looking back, it was something that really helped us because it made it so that people that wanted to send other people money through Venmo didn't have to require them to be on Venmo. They just needed their phone number. So that's kind of how, the first segment, that's where Venmo came from. And, a few nights of brainstorming, and then something that pushed us over the edge that got us to make the first prototype. And here's a takeaway from there. Until Cortina and I found a reason to build something, or to reason to use something with each other, we never built it. And because at first it started off as something for musicians, but both of us weren't musicians. And one thing I've learned is sometimes building something that directly improves your life is a great way to impact others. It's also fun, like you get to use something, you're working on something, and that kind of kept the momentum going, through the highs and lows. Next up, I'm going to talk about product fit and funding. What is product fit? Product fit is basically, how I describe it is, we had this version, we had something that was working, we had something that allowed me and Cortina to send money to each other. It worked really well for us. However, we also wanted to build something that other people would use too. So we had this technology, now we were trying to find a way to apply it to a market and find a place for Venmo to grow. And part of this process early on involved a lot of experimentation. So I'm going to walk you through some of the use cases that we explored very early on. As I said early on, we applied Venmo to a bunch of use cases. So here's one. There was a period of time, for a month or so, where we were really jazzed about using Venmo in food trucks. Venmo's first office was in Philadelphia, and I ran around to all the food trucks, because food trucks on Penn's campus only accept cash. We essentially forced them to sign up for Venmo, saying, hey, you got to try this thing out, don't worry. I remember some food trucks didn't even have bank accounts, and I would take them cash. The cash out mechanism was Iqram for a lot of these food trucks, and I would deliver them cash every 2 weeks, every Friday. So the Venmos had paid receipt, and that was one thing. And I remember, in parallel, we were pitching to investors, because we were really excited about this idea. And I remember in one meeting, someone was like, so what's the market for this? And I was like, every food truck in the world. And that didn't really go well. So another avenue we were exploring was charities, Venmo for charities. One of our investors is Will.i.am, and we thought, hey, what if and he had a foundation at the time, and we said, what if you used Venmo to collect money for your foundation while you're at a concert? So we put the slide together. We had this is kind of like a business development pitch, and we put it together, and we got it to their team. They signed off on it, and we did it. And I remember flying to LA to his concert, 5 minutes, so we had 5 minutes. And no one actually used it, so we ditched that.
And we kind of stuck back at Venmo Express, which is what you use today. And that's where we landed. But the key takeaway here is we also tried Venmo for merchants, like pop-up vendors using Venmo. And now there's something called Square for that. Good thing we didn't go down that path. And simultaneously, we were raising money to go full-time and hire more engineers. This is a clip from our first executive summary. You'll notice that we have a lot of glamorous thoughts behind Venmo, even though we were trying to find the market fit. At first, no investors were biting. I remember being in a room saying Venmo is going to be the first $1 trillion company. Investors were coming back that we need more traction. I was like, well, we've got a prototype. What do you mean? And then after one of our ideas, our advisor, Sam Lesson, helped us conceptualize the notion of trust, where you could create a circle of friends on Venmo and basically share money with them. It's like a shared bank account. If anytime you charge someone, the charge goes through automatically. We were able to garner excitement from investors, and then we quickly raised 100K, which allowed me and Cortina to go full-time, and on top of that, hire our first engineer. And once you get that first check, in my experience, once we got that first round of funding, the rest was very easy. It was like a domino effect. People were like, oh, people were calling us up left and right, and it really got the ball rolling. So throughout our history, we raised about $5 million, and we only went up to a Series A. And on June 5th, we launched the version of Venmo you see today. Here are some of the iterations. Well, we upgraded the logo. I made the first version, the multicolored one, and then we hired a real designer to do something a little more clean and friendly and something you could put on multiple backgrounds. Then we launched an app. We were no longer SMS only. We modified the app a little bit. And now, on June 5th, 2012, which is, 4 years ago, we launched the version of Venmo that everyone uses today. And some cool things about it. It's social. It works on your phone. It's with you everywhere you go. And it's fast. So what did I learn there? One is the first few product iterations are driven by instincts and emotions. Subsequent ones are influenced by usage. This is what I looked like in the early days. I was literally staring at the logs, like waiting for someone to use Venmo. And every time someone used Venmo, I would like run into the hallway and scream. And then I go back and like watch the logs, waiting for someone else. Now I can't do that anymore, unfortunately. It's we need data scientists. So, if you're studying computer science, good area is machine learning. Another thing I learned is it's important to experiment. Once something sticks, go big, go for it, like go all in. That's my personality. So the food trucks thing wasn't really working, but for a month I was all about it. After that, charities weren't working. I was all about it, but we ditched it. But then when we started talking to our friends and watching the logs and seeing friends using it with each other, leaving these casual, friendly notes, and it was growing virally without me running around telling everybody about the product. It was like, okay, this may be the one. So you have to be relentless about handling failure with persistence and positivity. So, one of the side effects of experimentation is oftentimes your experiment will fail. That means you take that with positivity and persistence. So once we launched the version of Venmo, I'll quickly go through this because we're running out of time, but we felt the product was ready. However, our costs were growing exponentially as our transaction volume was growing. So we were spending lots and lots of money. It would have required hundreds of millions of dollars from investors in order to sustain Venmo, even to a point where it was break even. We had plans to earn revenue, but nothing was promising. We had no promising traction. Profitability was nowhere near us, and everyone was kind of getting antsy. So we started exploring acquisition possibilities because no one wanted to continue to invest in Venmo. Fortunately, one of our investors had another company, Braintree. His name was Samir Gandhi. He invested in Venmo, and one of his other portfolios was Braintree. They connected us. And 2 weeks before Venmo was about to go bankrupt, Braintree acquired Venmo. The way I look at it, Braintree saved Venmo because they came in at a time when Venmo was literally contemplating shutting down. We only had 25,000 users at the time, and our transaction volume was crazy. We were spending, tens of millions of dollars to keep Venmo a free service. We knew if we charged, no one would use it. And Braintree came along. They saw the raw potential of a consumer product and what it could do for a company like them. And we teamed up. And I joke with my investors. We used to the last few board meetings. They got a little tense. Hey, Iqram, what's going on? We got to start making money. I'm like, there's no way they're making $10 million in the next 2 months. We were like, shoot, what do we do here? And as soon as Braintree bought us, I called up, one of our investors, and I said, yo, check it out. Venmo went profitable overnight, baby. But I'll tell you, we laugh about that now. But back then it was a fun, challenging experience. So what I would say. So after the acquisition, everything started to click for Venmo. The product that we launched started to grow went very viral. Usage, processing, brand recognition across the board. And we finally saw our early instincts come to life. And a year later, PayPal made Braintree a terrific offer, something we couldn't refuse, and they acquired us. And now we're here. So one of the takeaways is early instincts can carry you a long way. So 7 years ago, Cortina and I had an instinct of paying each other. We stuck with it, we experimented, and we still stuck with it. And even still today, the product that you use is based off of an early instinct we had. Another thing I've learned is this. Throughout my experience writing a lot of code for Venmo, I was listening to this album by Stevie Wonder called Live at Last. It's a live album, and in the beginning of the concert, he's like 60, and then he says we're just getting started in a manner that gets the entire crowd behind it, and that's kind of how I feel every single day. Venmo is very much in a great place, but I still think Venmo is getting started. There's so much it can do, and that's kind of how I look at life with everything I do. So to kind of circle things back to where Venmo did start, at a conversation at Jason O'Mara's concert this year on February, Jason built a site that allows, independently of seeing this presentation or even hearing about the story, he built a site for his band, which is not the band that we saw 7 years ago, but a band that's kind of similar, where the band could accept Venmo tips through the platform, which also kind of goes back to the "we're just getting started" comment, because Venmo is probably getting into a space, entering a period where you can offer a development platform to people like Jason, and the products that can come out of that, who knows? And finally, my ultimate takeaway is work with people you love, and love will lead the way. One of the key consistent, most memorable times of my life working throughout the working through Venmo was the team that we assembled, and everyone there was, this is a picture of us right before we moved to New York City from Philadelphia. And I think one of the people here is in the audience, actually, Matt Hamilton, on the bottom right. And I hadn't seen him for like 3 or 4 months, but the amount of memories that you'll build with the people that you're kind of in the trenches with when you're at the startup phase are priceless, like MasterCard. Or should I say Venmo? But that's all I got. Thank you.